It is officially Ilia Topuria fight week, and I think Ilya's in a really interesting spot in his career right now, where I think he's one of two active MMA fighters who has a realistic chance of going down as the greatest fighter of all time. I think it's Ilia Topuria, and I think it is Islam Makhachev. And so in today's video, I'm going to be laying out the path, what I think Ilia needs to do to end up retiring as the GOAT. And before I do kind of go into that path, I think we need to touch on what the current standard is, who is the GOAT, what are their accolades, what is Ilia trying to compete with. And so I don't think there's a universal GOAT of MMA that everyone agrees on. Some are going to say Jon Jones, some are going to say GSP, some are going to say Demetrius Johnson. Just straight up, I'm not going to compare him to Jon Jones. I think unless Ilia pops for steroids, then they're going to be comparable. I just don't think someone can be the GOAT if they failed multiple steroid tests, because you just don't know what their true form would have been if they weren't cheating the sport and cheating their opponents. So I'm going to be comparing Ilia Topuria to Georges St-Pierre, 20-2 UFC record, 13 title wins, won belts in multiple different weight classes, and then not something that I think is necessary, but he actually avenged both of those losses. So he has beaten every opponent he has gone up against. Now, I don't need Ilia to match those exact numbers. I don't need Ilia to get to, 20 wins in the UFC. I don't need him to get to 13 title wins. I think it's undeniably tougher to be a long reigning champion today than it was 5, 10, 15 years ago. I don't know if we're ever going to see reigns like GSP, Jon Jones, Mighty Mouse, Anderson Silva from now on. If someone was able to do that, they would probably just end up going down as the GOAT. I just think competition is so much better today. It's also tougher to break into the UFC and get super early title shots. When you look at GSP's career, he fought Matt Hughes for the title at 7-0 as a pro with 2 wins in the UFC. And he was only 2 years into his pro career. You would never see someone getting a UFC title shot only 2 years into their MMA career. It just wouldn't happen in today's MMA, barring them coming over, being a super high level athlete in another sport. If you're just starting MMA as a young 20-year-old, that's just not going to happen. And so what is the bar that Ilia would actually have to hit here? I think there's one kind of contingent path where if he was able to do it, he would just automatically become the GOAT. And in my opinion, that would be beating Charles Oliveira this weekend for the lightweight title. And then at pretty much any point, barring a ton of losses, moving up to welterweight and taking the title off of Islam Makhachev, JDM, whoever's up there. If he could go from 145, beat the greats he did there, beat an all-time great at 155 for the title, and then get that third title up at 170, for me, that would just stamp it. He could retire there. I don't care about the number of wins, a 3-weight world champion doing it in 3 of the 4 toughest weight classes in the UFC. I think that would just be an automatic bid to be the GOAT. Do I think that's super realistic? Probably not. I don't think the UFC is going to let him beat Charles and then jump up into a super crowded division with a ton of viable contenders and just jump the line. I know Islam did it, but I don't think you can do that in 2 different weight classes. So if that happened, obviously it would be insane. I think realistically, the more reasonable path without the 170 title would be 4 lightweight title wins. Now, that doesn't really seem that unobtainable. 4 title wins, seems like he could get that done within the next 4 years. But I think you look at the strength of schedule. Obviously, one of those wins would be against Charles Oliveira. I think another one, and in my opinion, the toughest matchup for him amongst active 155ers would be Arman Tsarukyan. I think those 2 wins would be extremely high quality. And then it could be a Max Holloway, it could be a Justin Gaethje, it could be a Paddy Pimblett, whoever's kind of climbing to the belt and getting those opportunities within the next few years. If he were to get those 4 title wins up at lightweight, this is what his overall resume would be. It would be 6 total title wins. He would be a champ, obviously, in 2 different weight classes. I think he would have 3 all-time great wins with the Alexander Volkanovski win, the Max Holloway win, and then the Charles Oliveira win. And then he'd probably be retiring undefeated. He's talked about how he doesn't want to have a super long, drawn-out career. I think he actually talked about retiring at 30, 31, somewhere in there. So he might only have a few years left in the sport. And when we're looking at the other elite double champs, the guys that are in the GOAT debate, GSP, Jon Jones, yeah, they got multiple belts, but they didn't truly beat the elite of both weight classes and multiple wins. GSP went up, he beat the actual champ fair and square against Michael Bisping. It was a great performance, but it's not he cleared out 2 weight classes. Jon Jones, he has not beaten a top 2 heavyweight, right, with that second belt. He didn't beat Francis Ngannou. He hasn't beaten Tom Aspinall, and he's probably going to walk away before he fights either of those dudes. If Ilia could win at 145, take out 2 of the 3 best featherweights of all time in terms of like overall resume in Holloway and Volk, and then move up to 145 or 155, take out a top 3 lightweight of all time in Charles Oliveira, take out a guy like Arman Tsarukyan, who I think might not have the accolades just because he's been pinned behind in Islam Makhachev, then potentially Ilia. But like Arman Tsarukyan is a very, very high level win. And then in still one of like the best, if not the best weight class, like wins against a second Holloway win, a Gaethje win, Paddy Pimblett, if he's getting to that title shot, probably picked up another solid performance. That is just a really, really strong resume. And so then the question I think is, can he actually do it? Like, can he pull off this path? And I do think it is attainable. I mean, right now he's a minus 410 favorite against Charles Oliveira. This is, like I said, an all-time great lightweight, and he's greater than a 4-1 favorite moving up weight class. Like, that is crazy. And then I do think I mentioned this, but I do view Arman as the toughest test. I just think his physicality is so extreme in this weight class, his control grappling. I think the way you get to Ilia is you just take him down, you hold him there, you really wear on him with the wrestling. I think it's going to be tough to go out there and just starch him on the feet, which seems to be what you have to do to, win a matchup against him. So then if he can get past Arman, which I would still take Ilia in that fight, then the next 2 title defenses are probably a lot easier. And then at that point, I feel like the only thing that could really mess with him is if Islam actually goes up and has a lot of success at 170, because if Islam moves up and is winning 3-4 title wins up there, then I think Islam Makhachev separately has like a really strong case also. And so I do think there's still going to be debates on like, all right, well, GSP, Mighty Mouse, these guys have the volume of wins. In this scenario with Ilia's 6 title wins, like he would have less than half of GSP's. And I'm not someone who's going to like go back and just like super hardcore nitpick the quality of competition. I think when people do that, especially with guys like GSP or like long reigning champions, they're like, oh, they didn't beat these former champs. And it's like, yeah, because there were very few big names, like high level guys for them to actually beat, right? Like Mighty Mouse, what former champions are he supposed to beat when he's just been the champion the entire time? So it's not a super fair argument, but I do think like it is clear the quality of competition today is just way higher. And the fact that he could take out the greats in 2 different weight classes, like I do think that would give him a really strong case. And then honestly, maybe it comes down to an Ilia Topuria Islam Makhachev fight where Islam picks up a couple wins at 170, and then we have like the biggest fight of all time, or like the second biggest fight of all time behind Conor and Khabib, where we have Ilia Topuria, the guy who was the champ at 145 and 155, moving up to 170 to take on Islam Makhachev. And that is admittedly like a very tough fight for him. The fact that he now has to like move up 2 weight classes above where he spent the rest of his career, like that would certainly be tough, but that would obviously be an amazing spectacle and a fight that I do think Ilia would be competitive in. And so like overall, kind of wrapping this up, I think Ilia has a legit case to go down as the greatest fighter of all time. I think the path is there. Let me know if you guys agree with what I talked about, like 4 lightweight title wins. Is that enough? Do you think he needs to do more? You think he needs to get the 3rd belt? Would love to hear your thoughts. But thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.